Good evening. Friday, October 8th, 2021, here in Sarasota, Florida, 8:31 p.m. locally. In today's share, I'm going to work to convey three different things. First, I want to try to convey the energy of this moment through my unique character of Alyson and where Alyson is at this moment in time. So that will sort of set the tone and the energy and the vibe of this evening's share. The second thing I would like to do is give the present day setting of this sharing and mention, not by direct name, but this is definitely inspired, this new approach and this particular recording and what I'm attempting to share today is inspired by three very specific ladies. This I would love to set a little bit more of an outer framework of to whom, if I'm directing this to anybody, it would be to them simply as a thank you for serving as the inspiration. And I'll give a little bit more background on that in a few minutes. And finally, I'm going to continue from the most recent recording I released on my YouTube channel. I'm going to kind of leave off, start up with from where I left off. And if anybody listened, you will know that it abruptly ended. It ended in a confusing manner and definitely didn't end with what I would say my best energy. I sort of left the story hanging from way more of my ego energy, where tonight I feel as if I'm coming to you more from my higher self and channeling a higher version of the character of Alyson, for lack of a better way of describing it. And so I will continue with the story. So that's the plan, and I hope to do it within about 40 minutes total and not go over 40 minutes. So here we go. First, to set the energy tone a bit, the past 2 months have absolutely kicked my ass. I have not been knocked down quite to this extent by life in quite a long time. This used to be the norm for me. When I would get knocked down in my life, pretty much from age 15 to 34, I was knocked down for weeks, months, and in some cases, years, and really didn't understand the process of, bringing myself back up. And oftentimes then didn't really learn the lessons, didn't really understand what life was trying to get me to see or understand or accept or release or forgive or heal within myself. Now I'm much further along on my journey. I understand myself in hugely different ways, but that journey doesn't end. So the lessons continue, and it's just like when you kind of are in school. When you're a senior in high school, the tests that you're given are not at a third grade level. They're at for lack of a better way of saying it, they're at the level of a 12th grader, not a third grader. And so it is when you're on the spiritual journey. The lessons that you learn further along, they would have kicked your ass even more back down prior to where you are now. So, if they're kicking you now, it's because you're really being asked and given an opportunity to grow and expand in pretty significant ways. I have been knocked down hard and in the ego energy hard. And it has been definitely a lot to process and to try to give myself space to just be with a lot of uncomfortable energy. Now, I would say that I'm on the tail end of this particular knockdown, but I'm not yet standing back up, in the ring. I'm still kind of climbing the ropes, to use a boxing metaphor. And the countdown damn near got to 10. So I'm not necessarily feeling all that good yet, but I'm climbing up the ropes and I'm regaining my balance and I'm regaining, just kind of regaining my stability and my balance and ready to, stand straight and go back at life again. Not that I want to see it as a fight or a battle. In fact, even using that as a metaphor, which I didn't plan to use, is such an indicator of where I'm at and one of the greatest lessons that I am currently faced with, which is the following. Are you going to continue to fight and struggle, or are you finally going to learn the lesson that you just have to let go and allow and receive? And I've been a little fighter this whole life, quite literally. I was born 6 weeks early when I decided to excitedly join the world on December 9th, 1975, and had to fight for my life from the moment I was out of the womb. I didn't get to come home to my mom until Christmas Eve, I think, and I was her first one, so I also happened to be born with a great deal of fear energy present. My mom was terrified when her water broke 6 weeks early because her older sister had lost a baby the same way and the same time frame. Her older sister's water had broken 6 weeks early and she had lost the baby. So quite literally again, and I actually in a hypnosis appointment on March 1st, 2012, I had a hypnosis appointment out in Seattle, Washington, where I literally went through the birth canal, like I relived my birth in this life and had a profound experience of feeling my mom's absolute terror about her firstborn child being born in this way. And that has been another lifetime energetic pattern that I'm smack dab in the middle of again, which is to choose love over the fear. And it's never been because the love energy hasn't been present. It's just that I've had a lifetime where the fear energy has always trumped the love. And I have so much love that hasn't been able to I haven't been able to allow it to fully express because I haven't fully been able to release the fear. I'm better than I've ever been, but this recent knockdown has brought back to the surface all the areas where I still hold fear, and therefore also all the areas where I'm fighting to stay alive and fighting to survive and fighting in this life. And so that's sort of where the energy is. I'm near the end of this particular knockdown, so I'm getting there. I'm almost reconciled from the latest revelations. I'm almost, standing straight again. I'm almost regained in my balance for any given time, because you can get knocked off at any given time. So it's always a day-to-day struggle, really, to keep that balance, or it's day-to-day work to be cognizant of one's balance in all their areas, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And at these times right now, it is an unprecedented challenge, I think, for everybody to try to maintain their balance with all the instability in the physical world around us. So there's the energy. It's on the positive side, I would say. But it's definitely been triggered very recently within the ego. And that's when I can slip into, we all do. When we slip into the muck of the ego in the third dimension, it's not necessarily the prettiest parts of us. So, that also can be kind of embarrassing because the nature of my work is to be sort of vulnerable and open with what I share in this process. And as such, I can open myself up to being like, oh man, God, that's a little embarrassing. I'm definitely in my ego energy. I'm definitely sleeping into judgment and criticism. And anytime you do that, it's ultimately you working through what it is within yourself that you're criticizing, that you're judging, that you're not, just being more gentle and accepting of. So there's the energy tone. The setting. It kind of goes, it piggybacks off a little bit of the energy tone because it correlates with what happened and what triggered all this 2 months ago. On August 1st, I began this online marketing course. And the first weeks out of the gate, even this is so embarrassing, I was so excited and so on a high, unlike I had been, arguably in this entire life, as I joined the largest group that I had ever been around of other, what I would call, awake beings. And in this day and age, what that means is, at the most general level, that with regards to the insanity taking place on the planet right now, one understands there's a hell of a lot more going on than what is being shared through any mainstream outlets. That left is right, down is up, lie is truth, and it is almost impossible to know what in the hell is really going on. But all the people in this group, and I feel safe in saying this simply because the guy teaching this course is a very big voice in a movement referred to, anybody that listens to my work with regularity knows that I do all that I can to refrain from identifying with labels, titles, groups, and hierarchies, but unfortunately we still have to speak in those terms, at least in minimal ways, to often have some sort of starting point when trying to communicate. So, for lack of a better term, this guy is really big in the truth network and the spiritual network and the fifth dimensional energy, speaking about the new earth, speaking about where we're going. But he has also had tremendous success in the third dimension as an online marketer and as a business entrepreneur and an owner of many small businesses. So the guy's been very successful in the third dimension, but is also very wide open to the higher dimensions and to the shift in consciousness. Therefore, anybody that was drawn to take his course, I dare say, I almost say that it's 100% across the board. Anybody taking his course, at least right now in this stage, is somebody that's seen the world and knows that there's a lot of crazy shit taking place and that the mainstream narrative is not at all the truth. And so that was overwhelming on many levels to be exposed to that many people all at once because, and I'm not going to try to explain why any further than that, but it was absolutely overwhelming to me, and per normal, when left to my own devices and not having to navigate the third dimension, I naturally go, oh my God, like I go to the love, I go to the trust, I go to the excitement, I go to the passion, I don't worry about plans, and I feel, and I'm in all of it, and I'm feeling all of it, and I'm open to all of it, and invariably, because we are still navigating the third dimension, I come crashing back down to the third dimension when I finally even out. Now, I've tried to do a lot better, and I have been a lot better in trying to balance and have more awareness of this reaction within myself. I don't often adversely affect anybody outside of myself, not any longer. I perhaps was guilty of that for a good number of years prior to my awakening, but since my awakening, all that imbalanced reaction does is really hurt me, and it's really simply it's just exhausting. It's become more and more exhausting because the miraculous thing is that I found that being balanced is unbelievably much more efficient than the massive ups and downs that defined most of my life. It's a very, very hard pattern to break. We can add that to the list and make it our third overwhelming pattern of energy that I am presently facing as a life, because I haven't learned these lessons. And these are like high-level lessons that I know my soul came here and chose the unique personality of Alyson to learn these lessons. And again, so the first one was overcoming the massive amount of fear, which has always trumped the love present in my life, beginning with the literal way and timing and nature of my birth into this life. So that's the first thing that I've had to work to overcome. The second is Oh gosh, I did this last recording too. I lost my train of thought. Can you do it? Can you find it? What was the second? Fear. Oh man. Picking up from where I left off, identifying now these three patterns of energy that I am smack dab in the middle of, face to face with, as lifelong challenges to work to overcome in this particular incarnation. The first one is overwhelming fear, or choosing love over fear when having a lifetime where the reverse has been the pattern and the norm. The second one is choosing to let go and allow and surrender and receive, as opposed to fighting and struggling with life. And the third one that I just brought up was the massive difference between engaging from a more balanced point as opposed to any extreme of any spectrum of any aspect of living. Balance is preferred, and I would make a very strong argument that balance, being balanced, engaging in the world in a balanced way, is leaps and bounds exponentially more effective and efficient when you start talking about navigating the material world. Okay, so we've got the character Alyson, we've got her tone. I set the tone for the character. The setting, we're in present day, we're in Sarasota, but what I started to say was this class was the impetus to this latest round of facing a lot of stuff that still isn't healed, isn't released, that I'm still struggling with in the ego dimension, so that I may continue to ascend to the higher dimensions and to the higher expressions of my character. And three women that I referred to earlier, they each live, one is in the United States, one is in Australia, and one is in London. And they are, as I alluded to earlier, the direct inspirations for this new approach. Two of them I know listened to the most recent recording, and therefore they are the ones to whom this last part I'm going to be, it's on their behalf, because they will know who I'm speaking about without me even using names. Okay, so I don't know that really sets up the setting, other than to say that I have got, okay, again, this is a little bit of a digress, but it's also intended to sort of explain my work and my approach. Everything is about the energy, and I am all about very deep connections and very nuanced, honoring the very nuanced, unique ways that personalities exchange and how they play with one another, the energies. So these specific women, their energies, I have interacted with these women all on a one-to-one basis multiple times. And so our energies, our connections are very unique. And all these ladies are also, like me, very well aware of the shift in consciousness taking place, and therefore a very massive shift in how reality is defined, and I would argue how we even engage in our day-to-day in terms of what we're manifesting, and open to understanding that with more conscious intention and agreements between people, you can achieve far more than with vast numbers of people, what it took to achieve with vast numbers of people in the third dimension. Now, I may have lost some folks with that, but suffice to say, the ladies listening, if they choose to listen to this, their physical locations matter. So being one is in Australia, it's like if you can imagine these links of energy. And I'm always intending for it to be of the highest light, the highest expression, because I am quite literally intended to bring into form this higher consciousness and this different version Well, it's already in existence. The new earth, the higher dimensions are already in existence. We are rising our frequencies so that we may experience in mass those realities. And I perceive my role on the one human team at this exact time to be, at least in part, a big player in working to try to bring those into physical manifestation to those in the third dimension, so that it can be seen and understood to be real, and thus serve as an example of how and to what extent we really do create our own realities. Okay? So that's all I'll say on the setting. And okay, so I've got 20 minutes to try to make within my 40-minute goal. And this will allow me to go back to the end. It's connecting back to the ending of the previous recording. I'm going to take a pause to see how to synchronicities. Nothing is happening by accident. It never is. And all paths, especially at these times, are crossing for, let's just say, the potential for huge purposes and soul level intentions that we set out. The higher selves of all of us set out a plan when we all chose to incarnate into the human vessels, into the human characters at this time. And I have been living this consciously and sharing it on my YouTube channel for over 9 years. My work is inseparable from my being. In the third dimension, you often would hear the separation between work life and personal life. And I've never been able to make that. I can't separate the two. And I certainly have been consciously working to absolutely not separate the two ever since I launched my company of me. And in no small way, what guides my company and my work is my intuition, because my life is my work. They're interchangeable. And nothing I'm living isn't without conscious intention. Now, before my awakening, you just go to a job and I'm just earning a paycheck, or I really didn't know what the hell I was doing most of the time. Because I certainly wasn't resonating with climbing any corporate ladder or staying in any one career or working just to get a pension or a retirement fund. Like, that stuff never made sense to me. It definitely didn't inspire me. It wasn't even enough to motivate me. So I have always known that the way that life looks when you're honoring your intuition, when you're honoring the now moment, and when you cannot separate the work from the personal, that was where we were going. If not in my lifetime, which honestly I didn't expect this shift to happen in my physical lifetime. I had no clue when it was going to happen, but this is the shift that we are living through right now. And so I do believe, again, I can't force anybody else to agree to see my story this way, but this is still how I'm seeing it. I feel like I have been channeling a story through the character of Alyson for 9 years that has basically been living in the way that life is going to look going forward. It's now seeing that, we don't know because that hasn't manifested yet. But what I can say is the way that I've approached my company and my work and my life, even though on the surface it might look like I'm doing what everybody else is doing, it has been anything but. And I started that by giving money away with the establishment of my company. And my company, because we were in the third dimension, I had to do this I still had to do this through the tools and structures of the third dimension. So I somehow had to bring down this vision and frame it into work and do it through a company, and then try to operate my company truly being from a fifth dimension as opposed to a third dimension. And I started that knowingly and purposely by giving money away to start my company as opposed to asking for investment into my company. Now, details of that is for another recording. But I share all of this because my intuition, I have been studying and developing my intuition, and I would say that is another way of saying that is that I have a very intimate relationship with my higher self. I haven't just glanced my higher self. I haven't just, I know my higher self. I have a relationship with my higher self. I even have a name for my higher self. And when I am involved in my day-to-day life, and certainly when I'm doing my work, I can point out at times when I'm channeling my higher expression, my higher version, my higher self, and when I'm more stuck in the third dimensional aspect of the character. But the intuitions have been what guide me. And then I've been studying my own ability to pick up on an intuition. It's like a vision, it's a feeling, it's tapping into something that's not yet known, not yet in the physical. And what I've been doing is understanding more and more my process of I'm a vision. I have visions. I feel visions. That this is what's so I feel the future potentialities. I feel them. And when I close my eyes, that feeling, I can see it, but I cannot describe it with words. And I've been the only way I've been even close to being able to describe this is by living it. I had to live it. So my whole life, for 9 years now, has been living this vision. And a big part of that has been my intuition. My intuition picked up that I was going to cross paths with Mark Atwood and with Mel Kay and with Roseanne Barr. Now, tune in to my next recording as the story continues.